Relax and tell them what you know.
Not much. Well, thanks for having me here this morning. Thank you, Pam and Molly, for your persistence. I'm a wallflower. I don't like to be in front of people. Just a little background. I'm a Minnesota girl. I grew up in Minnesota. Didn't know anything about Oklahoma except passing through when I was about 12 years old, and I knew if I got red dirt on my white Keds, they were ruined. And that's all I knew about Oklahoma. In fact, I took a little tub of that red dirt back to Minnesota with me. I went to college in Olathe, Kansas, just outside of Kansas City. I went to Mid-American Nazarene University there, and graduated with a home economics degree. I met a guy who was just a best friend, and he happened to be a Ponca City boy. He had graduated a year before I did, and life went on, and 3-4 years later, we hung out and got engaged and married in 4 months. So then I became part of a little bit more of Oklahoma. So we lived in Kansas City. That was home for about 10 years. And 1985, we got married. 1987, we had our first child and knew that we wanted to raise our kids, if possible, around family. My parents had moved from Minnesota to Arizona when they dropped me off at the door at my freshman year, and so Arizona wasn't home. Minnesota really wasn't home anymore, and Ponca City seemed to be a really good match for us. My husband's family had been here since, well, his granddad was at the dedication for the Pioneer Woman statue. His grandmother's mother sewed for the first Mrs. Marland. And so we have a rich Ponca City history. So we moved back in '87. Our daughter was 6 months old. And everywhere I went, it was like, oh, are you married to Geron Stangeland? Are you Gordon Stangeland? It was like I was like just a Stangeland because I was married to him. I didn't know anybody. So I was fortunate enough to get a job at Mertz. Had a most fantastic boss there. I guess while we were in Kansas City, I had worked for a fabric store. I also worked for Grable Van Lines. I handled all of the claims for Sprint and AT&T in Kansas City. But it was an office job, and I really missed being around people. I also started a custom sewing design alteration business where we did wedding dresses, alterations. I had a client bring in a video of a dress Vanna White wore one time on Wheel of Fortune. Can you make that dress for me? And it was like, okay. So I did that. My husband was in banking. So then we moved here. He was the program director at the YMCA. That's how we started out. And then I was working at Mertz in the engineering department. Fantastic place to work, fantastic people, but I had no idea what pivot eyes, and we at that time were making seismic vibrators, the big, huge dump trucks for Halliburton, and it was great, but it had no interest. I went home and a pivot eye I didn't know what it was. So one day at break, I was reading a Tulsa World newspaper, and there was an article on consignment stores. And I thought, that was pretty interesting. Our daughter was getting ready to go into pre-K, I believe, at that time. And we were a young couple. Our income, we were flexible, but I've always liked to find good deals. And so I went home, and I told my husband, I said, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Let's go to Tulsa. So we went to Tulsa, went to a couple consignment stores there, and I found that my dollar went a lot further. And I go, So I remember that was probably in August telling my boss, I said, I'm going to probably quit my job one of these days and start a business. He goes, really? I go, yeah. I said, I'm going to be a consignment store. He goes, well, what is that? I said, well, we take clothing and that has been used and we sell it. Our consigners get money. And he goes, really? I go, yeah. And so that was in August. And so I began researching it, and wasn't much of an internet person. Of course, this is in 1991. And so I went back to some of the consignment stores in Tulsa that I went to and asked if I could, I called beforehand, if I could speak to the owners. A couple of them were very receptive to me. One said, no, I get a lot of people from Ponca City. I don't really want to share my information with you. I go, okay. So, and then I went to Oklahoma City and Kansas City. At that time, we were still kind of in culture shock. We went back to Kansas City probably about once every 3-4 months to see friends from college. It was still kind of home. Ponca was still good, but we still missed a lot of Kansas City life and friends. So I kind of began researching that. Back then, a newsletter that I got every month had information from consignment stores from all over the country. There's an organization called NARTS, National Association of Resale and Thrift Stores. They go on cruises. I've never done that, but and then there was also a binder I bought. It was called Too Good to Be Through, THREW. And literally it was my Bible, and about that thick. And I got it out a year ago because my niece was wanting to look at some businesses. And you can see where I yellow highlighted just constantly in that book. And it was a huge, huge help to me. So we kind of, that was August. By January, I was really getting close to I was looking at buildings, and we knew we wanted to be downtown Ponca City. Number one, it was still really viable at that time. We are viable again. It's just so exciting to see what's happening in downtown Ponca City. Also, as a first, I don't know how this business is going to go. I knew my rent was going to be a lot more affordable downtown in Ponca City versus 14th Street. Another big shout I want to give, I took a class on being self-employed here at Pioneer Votech, Larry Atterbury. I think I did that for several months. We met. It was probably the best $150 I ever spent, and they were super helpful to me and my husband. So in 1992, in February, we found a building. It was on the corner of 2nd and Grand. Right now, I think it's changed a lot of times. There's a Buffalo, I think Barney's, the guy who has that, and there's a Buffalo outside it. But we started there, and it was called Kids Review. And it was a travel agent. We had to take down murals. We had to redo everything. And at that time, I had 2 kids, my daughter, and then I had a little boy who was 2 years old. And so we started on 2nd and Grand. I advertised about a month or so in the paper, word of mouth. I know when I opened the doors, I think I had 30 consigners. And let me start. We are, our goal, our objective is to offer quality clothing at affordable prices in current styles, in excellent condition. And we stay true to that philosophy. We don't want people coming in and, oh, it's really cute, but there's a button missing. But, oh, it's really cute. Well, no, I don't want people to think everything I look at might have something wrong. So we've always stayed true to that, wanting to provide quality, affordable, current style clothing. So I opened March 10th of 1992. So I'm soon to be starting my 28th year in business. And I had a card table, a cash box, because I thought, I don't know if I should invest in a cash register yet. And I think that very first day, I might have made close to I don't know, I think it was $500, which was like, that's crazy. And I was handwriting all of my tags and inventorying everything on a carbon copy. So I had a copy for me. I had a copy for my consignor because I always wanted to be completely transparent in what I was doing. And by May, I had almost 200 consignors. And I knew at that time, okay, I need to get to a computer system. And so I researched, and there were businesses that had computer software for my kind of business. And so I went to a computer system doing inventorying, printing tags, everything in May. And that was huge. And I did get a cash register too. So it was in 1992. At that time, my husband was working for a contractor out at Conoco. And that's when Conoco changes were starting to happen and things were changing. A year after we opened, I thought, I'd had so many people ask, well, what about women's clothing? Because I was only doing children's things. And at that time, I had about 800 square feet of space, and then my office and a little bit of storage room. And so we had an additional space behind where my kids' stuff was. So a year later, we began renting that, and so I had another additional 500 square feet. And so that was in 93. And I was quickly outgrowing that building and really was thinking, wow, I really need more space, and I also would like to purchase a building. And there wasn't really anything coming available, and a dear consignor friend, customer, Mary Ann Holt, had come in the store, and she said, you know what, I think I've got a building for you. And her brother-in-law had the family building that had been in her husband's family, and it was 309 East Grand. And Smith Holt was a professor at OSU, and we talked with him. He basically shook our hands. My attorney dropped the paperwork, and we bought 309 East Grand and moved there in 1996. And at that time, my husband was working full-time with me. The business that he had worked for as a contractor in Conoco was no longer in existence. We were busy, and so he started working with me then. So we moved into 309 East Grand. We had about 2,500 square feet, and I thought, this is it. I will never need any more space. I had extra space in the back, and it was great. And little by little, we continued to grow, and in 2001, the building next to me became available. And we asked the people who owned it if they would rent it to us, and if they would care if I opened up the building and adjoin our buildings. And so I talked with the city, they got permission, I hired an engineer to put an I-beam in, and we opened up that, and we had 2 buildings, and that was exciting. And of course, it happened a few years before I was going to pay my building off, but that's how it always goes, right? And so I thought, oh, this is great. And so I moved all of my children's things into that building, and our first building kind of morphed into her review, all of our women's things. We carried new maternity at that time. We were trying to meet a need there. We went to market 4 or 5 times a year, and we did that for a while. And the children's things then moved into the second building. Then, I dropped my notes. Anyway, a few years later, the building next to that came open, and I remembered when we moved to Ponca City, there had been a dress shop called Dana's at that shop. I don't know if any of you remember Dana's. And there was French doors that opened from Dana's into where my kids' things were. And I thought, well, there's an opening there. And so I contacted the people that rented that building and owned that building, and they would rent it to me. And the city said, yeah, you can open up that. And so then we had 3 adjoining buildings. So now I have about 6,000 square feet. And I moved all of my children's things into that building. Our middle building is only women's tops. And my husband is still shakes his head like, what do you ladies do with all of those tops? Because I really could use another building. I'm kind of landlocked now. We have been so blessed. But I said, well, women, we like to buy tops. Pants aren't any fun, but it's fun to buy tops. And if you come into our store, you will see, number one, I have an extremely organized husband, and everything is color coordinated. It's by size. So if you come in, I need a black top, I can tell you right away if we have it or not. And so that's kind of how we have morphed from kids review to her review. I have consigners where we have 2nd to 3rd generation now of kids, little girls. I remember coming in here. Now their mom's bringing in. At one time, I had 4 generations. I had a grandmother, her daughter, and then a teen that were bringing things in. I think Grandma was in her 80s, but she was bringing in consignments. I probably inventory about 6,000 things a month for 7 to 8 months. We take it seasonally. I start taking our children's spring and summer things right after the new year until the end of April. I start women's in February to the end of April, May, and then fall kids stuff we start right after the 4th of July taking consignments and go until about November. Our consigners get 45% of what we sell their item for. It's all kept track of by inventory tags. It's all in a computer system. So when that item sells, it goes right to their account and credits them that 45%. And so it will never change. When I first opened, it was a 50-50 consignment. But as insurance, just things like that, we went to 45. But if you go to most cities, things like that, usually it's a 40% to the consignor, 60% to the business. So we will never change from that. Trying to think what else. This is why I don't like to speak in front of people. But anyway, we have, I have employees. I had a retired school teacher who just retired from working with us last May. She worked for me 16 years. She loved it because she got her summers off so she could be home with the grandchildren, and she was awesome. I don't know if any of you have gone to TS Fork, but it's Miss Pat. She makes all of the bread for TS Fork. She makes all of their desserts. She's a retired home ec teacher, so we had a lot in common as far as not the food. I'm not a cook, but she was awesome, and she decided at 74 she needed to retire. And then I have, usually I have high school girls that come in after school and work. Our hours are 10 to 5, Monday through Friday, Saturdays 10 to 4. So it's a great job for high schoolers because it's not cutting into your evening time. On weekends, you're done at 4. You don't work on Sunday. And in fact, I have a high school girl working for me a couple days a week that her sister worked for me. She graduated. She's started working for me in 10th grade. She's in her junior year at OU Health Science getting her dental hygienist program, but she comes home on weekends. She'll be working this Friday and Saturday. So I'm going to be really sad when she gets her real job. Like I said, my husband and I, we work there full time. I'm lucky. He is truly my best friend. He is the organizer there. He is the business person. So I have the best job in the world. I have fun. I run a business, but I don't have to do the taxes, the payroll, or any of that because I have a partner that does that. And we literally drive to work together, leave. I maybe put gas in my car once a year. I mean, it's just, I'm very privileged. But he, like I said, he is my best friend, and we've done this now for 28 years, and I never dread going to work. We have the best customers, the best consigners. Pam, I looked her number up today. It's 227. I'm over 3,000 some on my ladies' side, and Pam is still a consigner. I think it might have even before you were married. I might have, yeah. So it's exciting for me and sad to see children grow up, and you've gone from these size clothing to. I eventually lose the boys because I don't do men's clothing. That's a beast I will never touch. I do research all the time. I'm always looking at name brands. I'm always looking at prices. I'm always looking at sales flyers. Even Talbots, so many years they changed the label. So I'm knowing if it's an old style or a new style. But it's been a wonderful business. It gave us the opportunity to be here in Ponca City and raise our kids. My kids were the 4th generation of our Stangeland family to graduate from Poe High. I have 3 amazing kids. I'll give a shout out. My daughter lives in Oklahoma City. She's a pediatric intensive care nurse for OU Children's. Her husband is an IT person for headquarters at Life Church. My son is almost 30. Whew. And he is a youth pastor here in Ponca City at St. Luke's Church of the Nazarene, and married to a wonderful girl who's going to graduate in May with her nurse practitioner degree. And then my youngest daughter, Kristen, is a 2nd grade teacher for Hilldale Elementary in Putnam City School District in Oklahoma City. She was just honored last night for the state. She was Teacher of the Year for her school, and married to a great guy who's also a teacher. And I'll have to say, my kids love Ponca City. My son lives here. My other ones talk all the time. Eventually, we'll probably like to move back to Ponca City. All of their friends, if they visit Ponca City, they'll go, oh, that's what we've heard about, or that's what we've heard about. I mean, they love Ponca City, and we do too. Ponca City has been great to us, and it's been a great place to have a business, a great place to raise my family, and that's my story.
Any questions for Becky?
So do you still rent the 2 other stores and just own that one? Or
I purchased our building at 313. We purchased it last year. Mrs. Lee owned it. She passed away. She was in her upper 90s. Her husband had Lee's businesses, clothing stores, and her brother-in-law. And her 2 children, one lives in San Francisco area, one in Colorado. And Mark graduated with my husband, and they just were interested in selling it. So we were able to purchase that a year ago. We still rent our middle building, but we have a very good relationship with who we rent it from.
First of all, I was so happy you were across the street when I was across the street.
Thank you, Kevin.
On more than one occasion, I ripped something across the street and didn't have to drive a 30-mile town to get something to wear. But what was your biggest surprise when you started and through the years? What's been your biggest surprise that really shocked you about the business?
I just think it's just a wonderful surprise, just the quality and the quantity that we get. I'm a worrier. My husband is not, but I am a worrier. And I grew up in a home where my dad was self-employed, so I wasn't really afraid of that. But I knew the highs and the lows of that. And even when Conoco had downsized and we lost so many consigners, we just continued to grow. We have grown every year in our business. And I don't have that nagging fear as much as I used to, like wonder if it stops coming in. Because it is our livelihood. So I'm just surprised. I'm surprised at how wonderful my consigners are. I shout out to them all the time.
And I thank you for being a good neighbor.
Oh, thanks, Verona.
Been there a long time together.
We have.
And I'm glad that you collect sales tax, because we have so many things coming downtown or have been downtown that do not produce sales tax. That's what keeps our city going, is the sales tax. And the loans and the lawyers don't collect sales tax. And that's taken up so much space on our Grand Avenue that I wish we could get together with some of them and let other businesses come in that do produce.
I think one thing I'll say, sometimes I'll be 60 years old this year, and I'm just thinking, what have I done with my life? And sometimes you just think, I haven't invented anything. I will have to say, I've raised 3 truly fantastic kids. I will shout that from the mountaintop. But then I have, because I sell used clothing. That's what I do. And but then I have, on almost a daily basis, people saying, I'm so thankful you're here. I'm so thankful that you have what you have for our kids that I can stretch my dollars for. Or I'm so thankful I have a place where I can bring these things and put some money in my pocket. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be there at least another 10 years or more. I have fun. I have fun doing it. And so when I do kind of get down in what have I done in my life? Well, I've had a business for 28 years. And that's saying something when some small businesses don't make it. So that's been a surprise that I'm a grown-up and I've done this 28 years. I don't feel like a grown-up sometimes.
So are most of your consigners, how big an area do consigners come from?
Oh, I just mailed a check to a gal who's in Houston. She's a Ponca City girl, but she's lived in London. She's lived in Paris. She's in Houston, and she'll send stuff with her grandma or her mom still live in town. My most frequent out-of-town customer, we are so blessed in Ponca City. We get so many people from Winfield and Ark City. It is crazy. It is crazy how many people we get from there. I still have a lot of my consigners who come from Bartlesville and Owasso and still bring things in. I have a consigner from Newkirk who moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and she was in the store this past weekend. And when she comes up to visit family, she's always coming in with her grandchildren, and so a lot. We get a lot of, but Ark City, Winfield are probably, and then Stillwater, and yeah.
That's pretty broad.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it great seeing all the generations, because we've been there a long time too. And when great-grandma brings in the new kid, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm beginning to lose the names, but I'll never lose the faces.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some yesterday that was in, and her grandson is 39 years old, and I said, that's how long we've been in business.
You have good stories too.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Do you know where the nearest consignor is? Near you? Where's the next closest consignor? Consignment like that?
You mean consignment business?
Yes.
Well, we used to have several in Ponca City that have come and gone, but probably Stillwater. Possibly there's some in Oklahoma, a couple in Oklahoma City. There's some, they're considered resale stores where they will buy clothing instead of sell them on consignment. And a lot for younger people, there's Plato's Closet in Oklahoma City, which they're a franchise, Daisy Exchange. But there again, I always tell people, if you consign and you're patient, you usually get more for your money. Because if I'm buying, I don't buy anything. If I'm buying, I'm not going to go out on a limb and pay a lot for that. You're getting not as much because if it doesn't sell, I'm out money. For me, if it doesn't sell, I don't have inventory in it. And our consigners can pick up clothing if it doesn't sell. Probably only 5% or less do that. On the children's side, at the end of the season, I completely clear out the store. My husband, we completely clear the store. Everything is put in numeric order by the consigner's number. And then they have a month and a half or so to come in and pick up what doesn't sell. When those things are pulled and what doesn't get picked up, we take the children's things to domestic violence shelter. On the women's side, if it doesn't sell, and most women, if you've cleared it out of your closet, you don't want it back. And so those things we take to charities. There's several in Oklahoma City that we take them to. And there again, I have an organized freak husband, and they're neatly folded. They're by color. They're by category. And so they love it when they come in. It's like not just thrown in a bag or anything. It's like, oh, there's color-coded pants, blouses, things like that coming in, neatly folded. I'm like, throw them in a bag. He's, no. So we don't ever repeat a season. We don't have the space to just have it linger and to have, and when you're shopping for fall, winter clothing, you don't want to see spring and summer clothing, and we don't take fall, winter clothing in this because you can get it 70% off at department stores. We try and run our seasons exactly like a retail store does. And twice a year on our children's side, we kind of have an event we call an open. We have a fall open and a spring open. The fall open is the first Saturday in August, and it's the first time we put any of our fall kid stuff out. And then the spring open is always usually the first Saturday, second Saturday in February, and we have all of our spring stuff out. And so it's kind of a little special event. I don't know. And the women's side, we just kind of blend out and blend in the seasons.
What is it that we can do as a community to support you?
I think I have, I can look in here and there's so many gals that have been consigners or are consigners, and we just really, I appreciate that. It's fun to get to know your story. And so I feel fully supported by our community. I kind of feel like my consigners and customers are almost a little family. Like you can see the sorrows and the joys and the growth that every family goes through. It's fun to get to know them, see what they're in activities. So I think Ponca City has done well. We have Main Street has done great. I'm not super involved in that. As a sole proprietor, I'm the only one who inventories everything. So if you can imagine inventory 6,000 to 7,000 things, I'm extremely busy doing that. And when my kids were at home, it was work, but kids were what I put my energy into. I'm very involved in our church as well. But now our community is the best. I love Ponca City, and my husband has a cousin who grew up here, and her husband's retiring as a broadcaster, and they're looking at homes to move here. They're in Idaho now, and he's bought OSU T-shirts. They're going to get season tickets, and they're looking forward to a smaller town community life. But our Ponca City has done very well by our business, and we love Ponca City. Yeah. Thank you.
You know, I was
Oh.
talking with Becky before we started. She said, I'm nervous, I'm not a speaker. Does anybody believe that? You did very
Thank you,
well.
Robert.
And really, as I listened to your story, this is really true entrepreneurship. And the way that you handle your business, you've got a niche that maybe that's why the other consignments didn't make it. But I think you've done everything right. You've got your own tax and accountant and all of that with you, you know.
I
You've got
know.
everything. But we really appreciate you coming and
Thank
talking
you.
to 1 Million Cups and sharing your story.
Thank you.
very much.
Yeah.
And for that,
Oh,
you get a
yay!
cup, your own coffee cup.
Yay!
So let's let her take a little pick here.
Oh,
with you.
okay.
Here, let me have your notes. Yeah, turn it around.
I
Yeah,
know.
turn
He
it
kept
around.
turning, and I was like,
And then move your shoulder back
Keep
this
me
way.
straight.
There you go. Okay. You guys ready? I got 1, 2, 3. One more. Got it.
thanks, dear.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Becky.
Robert.
You bet.